With the release of Assassin's Creed Valhalla right around the corner, I've had the series on my mind as of late. You know, replaying the games, rereading some of the novels, rewatching the movie. No, I'm never rewatching that piece of shit. But something that has been on my mind more specifically is Eivor, our new Viking protagonist of Valhalla. Since the last Assassin's Creed game wasn't exactly great when it comes to protagonist, I'm excited to see what Eivor could be. Will they rise above a lot of the mediocre characters, or will they fall flat on their face? Well, before we can see where Eivor stands, we first have to look at what the ranking looks like for the rest of the protagonists. So that's exactly what we're going to be doing today. Before we begin, it'd really help me out if you could hit like, and if you're new here and want to see more content like this, make sure to hit subscribe and hit the notification bell, because there's been some issues with YouTube lately. With that being said, let's jump into this. Let's rank the protagonists of the Assassin's Creed games. Alright, let's get this out the way immediately. Neither Kassandra nor Alexios are actual characters. Due to the systems in which Odyssey is set up, with meaningless dialogue choices, there is no tangible characteristics that either of these two share. They both act as simple vessels that allow the player to make completely erratic decisions, creating inconsistent traits and no sense of an actual character. This makes it somewhat hard to critique them as protagonists, because at the end of the day, they have nothing that actually makes them protagonists, let alone characters. I'm not going to explain this one for long, because I assume you all know my opinions on Assassin's Creed Odyssey, but it's safe to say that these two deserve to be at the very bottom of the list. Assassin's Creed 3's Ratin Hagaton, aka Connor, is one of the most divisive in the series. Many people absolutely adore him, usually due to Assassin's Creed 3 being the first game they played. But in my opinion, which you know if you watched my Assassin's Creed 3 retrospective, shameless plug, Connor is absolutely terrible as a protagonist. Probably the worst written character, let alone protagonist. Connor is a child through and through, from the moment we meet him to our final moments with him. Without any growth, without any development, Connor acts as an unrelatable, uninspired, boring character, with misguided motivations that end up coming to nothing. His entire journey throughout Assassin's Creed 3 is caused from blindly being manipulated by the likes of Juno, Achilles, and George Washington, never having any semblance of agency, with his single-minded vision constantly clouding better judgment, creating a character that at the end of the day, we end up having no motivation to even want to succeed. Connor is an absolute mess of a character. His motivations are all over the place, and his general traits are just boring. Which is why he is the worst protagonist that's, you know, actually a character. And now we move on to Evie Frye, the funniest assassin yet.
Why are we still here? Just to suffer every night.
At least, that's what Ubisoft Quebec thought he would be. Jacob is little more than a caricature, a boyish idiot with essentially no interesting qualities. His one-liners and absolutely hilarious moments are drowned out by the lack of any substance, along with, you know, the fact that he's not funny in the slightest. Jacob does nothing other than bring Syndicate down, as the slightly interesting story of his sister is mostly shit on by his burning desire to take over the gangs of London. In the Jack the Ripper DLC, we see a potentially grown, more nuanced character. However, we don't see him for long enough, leaving Evie Frye to be just another throwaway, forgettable, cringeworthy character. Oh, and of course, you can't forget he's a bisexual icon.
Why not?
Here we reach the part of the list that contains characters that Ubisoft at least tried to make good. Shay, although being a part of a game that's exactly 12 minutes and 38 seconds in length, does have some semblance of a personality. Although his catchphrase is cringy, and he's never particularly interesting, he's at least written competently, coming in as extremely forgettable, but not completely terrible. His decisions throughout Rogue actually have motivations behind them, which is more than you can say for the likes of Connor. That being said, him being a Templar doesn't truly affect the game in any tangible way, and his conflicting ideologies never truly make the player question the belief system of the assassins. At the end of the day, he's kind of just a simple, average, run-of-the-mill protagonist, being the bare minimum of what I would define as a passable character. Here we come to one of the more disappointing points on the list. Evie to me had genuine potential to be at least a good character, if not a great one. But Ubisoft's continued refusal to have a female-only protagonist essentially left Evie no time to actually develop or show her traits. Evie's story in Syndicate is one of genuine intrigue, as she actually gives a shit about finding the Shroud of Eden, as well as acting like an actual human as opposed to an early 2000s cartoon character. It's quite a shame, because I think if Syndicate's story was fully made up of her, it could have almost been redeemed. Of course, there's far too many issues with Syndicate to ever make it good, but it could have been at least better. But to say the least, its moments with Evie do usually shine, and that's why I think she deserves some respect on this list. And finally, more than halfway through this video, we reach the characters I actually like, starting with an Ezio ripoff. Okay, that might not be completely fair to Arno. To be honest, Arno Dorian was, to me, one of the more interesting characters in the series. Beginning the story as what would appear to be a simple attempt to recapture the charismatic magic of Ezio, Arno really did transform throughout the game into a much wiser, yet still individual character. Arno was a man who was far more questioning of the Assassin's Brotherhood than those who came before him. A man who truly recognised the blurred lines between the Assassins and Templars, and actually acted on them. A man who cared little for stature and power, and far more for protecting those he loved, and genuinely doing what was right. Arno really was the perfect character to embody the world of revolutionary Paris. That being said, he has his fair few flaws. His main one being his dedication to Elise, which begins as a decent relationship and motivation, but ends as a boring, forgettable romance with an anticlimactic death. However, we do see Arno grow out of this in the Dead Kings DLC, and the overall development and growth of Arno, combined with the quality performance by Dan Chano, despite it obviously being a French-Canadian actor trying to do a West English accent to try and play a French character, leaves Arno as fairly deserving of being at least top 5 on this list. To be fair, this one was the most difficult to rank for me. You see, I have a lot of personal connection to Altair and to the first Assassin's Creed game, and so part of me wanted to put Altair even higher than this. But if I'm trying to be as honest as possible here, this is where he deserves to land. Now, if Altair only had the first game under his belt, he may have dropped even further on the list. Whilst that first entry does give him a fantastic character arc, and his relationship with the Assassins, and more specifically Malik, are great, his general character traits, along with the blunt performance, doesn't put him in a great light. However, when you take into account his moments from Revelations, the Secret Crusade, and his effect on the rest of the series and the Brotherhood as a whole, he does deserve to get his respect. Transforming from a naive, egotistical boy into a fully fledged assassin, into an enlightened outcast, and eventually into a wise mentor, Altair Ibn-La'Ahad laid the foundation for what it meant to be an assassin. He reformed the entirety of the Brotherhood, and he did it all by actually growing and adapting his motivations and his philosophy over time. Here we come to a character who's somewhat dissimilar to most of the protagonists in Assassin's Creed, because he's far more defined by his relationships than him himself. Edward's story, of course written by Darby McDevitt, is fantastic, a charismatic pirate driven by greed and ambition who transforms into a selfless assassin, not by way of indoctrination or by being the chosen one, but by losing those he loves, by truly recognizing the errors of his way and the eventual path his lifestyle will take him on. His genuine love and loyalty for his allies, his friends, and for Caroline is one that, although at times causes him great pain and suffering, is the defining trait that eventually makes him such a good assassin and father, and his arc throughout Black Flag ends in one of the most emotional moments in the entire series, with him safely deserving a spot in the top 3. Bayek of Siwa is probably the reason I'm talking about Assassin's Creed today. He truly did revive my love for the series after the absolute disaster that was Assassin's Creed Syndicate. The combination of Abubakar Salim's performance and the fantastic writing of this father and Medjay truly revived my love for the franchise back in 2017. Probably the most uniting force for the community since Ezio, his depth and genuine motivations created a journey that leads him to not only avenge his son, but to eventually be rebirthed as a hidden one, letting go of his guilt and using his grief to establish the Brotherhood, perfectly coming full circle, walking the child at the end of the game home, which reflects his unwillingness to do so with Kenway. Although he's also not perfect, with an overemphasis on his one-sided relationship with Aya, his character flaws are far less significant than the likes of Arno, and unlike most of the protagonists, essentially all his narrative threads are fully tied up through Origins and his DLC. If we had only had the opportunity to see Bayek get a sequel, he more than likely could have had the potential to get on the same tier if not overtake Ezio. However, his appearance in Origins alone is far and away enough to put him definitively as second on this list. Now, I assume this is a surprise to absolutely no one. Ezio Auditore is to me not only the best protagonist in the Assassin's Creed series, but the best in all of gaming, and one of the best in all of fiction. We see this noble turned assassin from birth to death, witnessing his entire life's work, as he goes through the classic archetypal hero myth, as he begins his life with a feigned superiority based on class, which he soon sees is by no means backed up with skill. Over decades of training, both in mind and body, he learns to tame his hubris, humbling himself despite continuously gaining higher prestige and praise. He becomes a near messiah figure, but he maintains the elements of himself that made him so likable from the moment we see him. On a deeper level, it's his charisma, his wit, his charm that makes him incredibly likable in the first game. However, over time he continually grows, never losing said charm like Arno did, but simply adding to it a wisdom, a set of true moral values, and a respect, not only for the ones he loves, but for his enemies. By Revelations, he's a weathered veteran, who has all that which made him iconic in Tomb Brotherhood, but with an added sense of curiosity and truth-seeking, which is largely inspired by Sofia Sartor. Sofia, as well as the numerous other side characters throughout the games, act as Ezio's family, which is the title of the most memorable theme in the entire series for a very good reason. His family, these side characters, are his driving motivation throughout his entire life to do what is right. They are what progressively mold him into the legend he goes on to become. As he says in his final speech in Embers, it is love, liberty and time which have driven him throughout his life, and continue to drive him to protect his family. And these ideals of love and liberty were the ideals by which the Assassin Order from this point were to be based off. And as for time, if you didn't catch on already, it's kind of a running theme throughout the entire series. Ezio is undeniably the greatest character in Assassin's Creed. This entire video has just been my opinion, but I can truly say that with certainty. With the most archetypal narrative, his character story is the most consistent and most layered in all the series. He embodies all that is great about the series, from Arno and Edward's charisma, Altair's wisdom, Bayek's empathy and fatherliness, and Evie's curiosity. He is fully responsible for the series' success to this day. Roger Craig Smith, Corey May, Darby McDevitt and Patrice Désilets truly created an icon, created a protagonist that ascended the rest of the series, and truly did create the greatest character that the Assassin's Creed franchise will ever see. Well, that is as long as Eivor doesn't, come out of nowhere, get like 5 games and top him. But if you've seen my Ezio retrospective, you'd probably know that I don't really think that's going to happen. So with that all being said, thank you so much for watching. If you did enjoy it, it'd really help me out and I'd really appreciate it if you could hit like. And if you're new here and want to see more content like this, like I said, hit subscribe and make sure to hit that notification bell because YouTube doesn't like showing my videos very much. Also, I do read every comment, so feel free to comment down below, tell me your list, tell me what you would have changed about mine, or just tell me how much you hate me. Anyways guys, I've been Joe, aka FOUNDEDSCARAB, and I'll see you in the next one.